Good morning. Hello, everybody. Whoa, so deep. Hello. Good work waking up early and coming to join us. I hope you had a great time at that tasting last night. I hung out at all the, you go through, taste all the different beers, and then you stop and you just stay right by that one beer that you love, and you keep tasting it over and over and over again. If you guys were here late night, but there was a jam happening here with all the musicians on the boat. It's a secret jam. Don't tell anybody about it, but come out and check it out tonight. It's a lot of fun. So this is the beer and music panel, or the beer roundtable, I guess it is, Brewers Roundtable. I'm Kyle Hollingsworth. I'm a musician, a home brewer, and a beer enthusiast. I've been brewing for a long time, since I was 18, and yesterday was my birthday, and I turned 22. So I guess it's been 3 years. No, about 20 years or so, 25 years of home brewing, and I've been doing it. I think the first few beers I made were 25 years ago. The homebrewing community was definitely, that was the ancient times. I feel like you would go to the shop and you can make like 3 types of beer. It seems like you can make the Bass, or you had this little liquid container and you just poured in all your extract right in. And then just in the last 5 years or 6 years, I've gotten more pumped up and I'm getting more into it, and I've been doing all grain. But anyway, the reason we're here is to talk about beer and talk about, and in my mind, talk a little bit about how music and beer collide and how these two worlds are similar in their processes, similar in how they, from recipe creation to song creation through the process, and even possibly some industry stuff. So I brought along another musician. This is Austin. He plays horns with Youth Orchestra. Justin from the Brewing Network is right here. So we go down, continue Justin down the line. We got Justin over here from, I say so with all the J names first. From Cigar City over here. Jeremy from Lagunitas right here, Lagunitas. And see, another J, Jeremy from Stone right here. And Eric from Left Hand, right on. And we got David from Boulder Beer. Thank you, guys. So, like I said, I've been brewing for a long time, and as I was brewing, I was also learning to play piano at the same time, and I was finding the parallels in how I felt like the creativity of these two processes was together. And my first thought on this was to kind of talk a little bit about recipe creation. You guys have microphones there too, and how that starts with you guys. For me, sometimes when I'm writing a song, it will come to me when I'm sleeping, or it'll come to me when I'm hiking or doing something like an idea for a riff or some sort of direction to go with my songs. And I'm curious how you guys start with your recipe creation. If anybody has any, is there some sort of process where you feel like, I want to try some new possible ingredient or go down that road? Who would like to speak to that? Anybody? Jeremy, you're on. Guess what? Just tell me about your process. How's it work? Is it a lot of experimentation?
Hello.
Hello.
I was going to say, usually in the shower, isn't that where the best ideas come?
Yeah, exactly, right.
So I actually play piano as well.
Oh, of course, right. We jammed
together.
together.
Novice musician, jammed with Kyle a while back, which was really cool. It can be so many different things. I think, you have some food that you like, and you might get excited about a certain ingredient, or be out at a farm and you might see an ingredient or smell something that you haven't smelled before, or you kind of get really jazzed on it. Same kind of thing with music, I think. You get these kind of melody notes in your head sometimes that'll kind of just pop in there, and they stay in there, and you have to get it out at some point. And I think brewing's real similar to that as well. A lot of times it's just from you try a beer that you like and you get excited, and you want to find out, well, God, why are they getting this grapefruit? Or why are they getting this peach? And are they actually adding peaches, or is it from hops? There's so many amazing hops out there now. They're getting these flavors and aromas that, it's like you're putting fresh fruit in the beer. So I know at Stone we love hops, and we do a lot of different types of hoppy beers, and that's something that we continue that journey of just experimenting and trying to find different flavors and nuances to just keep trying to make the beers exciting and always looking for something new and different. While at the same time kind of going off of classic recipes. Just like a song structure, you have the structure, but there's things you can do around the melody line. There's things you can jam, different keys. So There's a short answer.
No. As far as like, and then do you take each? Do you start with a pilot batch each time for every brew, or is it?
Yeah, mostly. Nowadays we do. We didn't do that so much in the early days. We would just brew on, on the big system and go for it. But nowadays that we have a little more, flexibility. We have a 5-barrel system at the main brewery, and then we have a 10-barrel system by downtown, and that's really kind of the playground where we get to try out a lot of different things. And usually it works, not always, and it's not a disaster if it doesn't work at that scale. Right. A little different if 120 barrel scale is a little hard to buffer, but
when you put all the ingredients together, are you thinking about balance and how things are going to work together? And
yeah, and a lot of people say that Stone are really intense, in-your-face beers, but I would also say that yeah, they're intense, but they are balanced. I think balance is the key. I think we were talking about the other day about music too. You need to kind of have that balance.
Right.
There's times and opportunity to kind of go a little bit outside of the balance.
Right.
But for the most part, you really want to showcase different things, and I think that comes with a real nice, ingredients and cohesion of the ingredients.
So Eric, I want to get you talking. Let's get you talking. Let's talk about. Oh gosh, now we got it going. Now we're.
Take the mic away. I wanted to say that there's some opportunities that we did because we were piloting on a 60. That's a 60 barrel batch. That's a little bit of a risk as well.
I'm about to say, yeah.
We're splitting batches, so we would dry hop 230s. We'd put them into different tanks. Now we're operating. We have our 7-barrel pilot running as well. So we've been running all these dry hopping trials, trying to figure out. There's lots of new hops coming out, and there's a lot of hops you can't get. So we're playing with stuff we can get and see what we're able to do with that. Another thing we'll do in the tasting room is we got a Randall in there, and we let our guys go crazy with the Randall. It's like try different flavors with different beers and cask. We're dry hopping, dry vegging, dry whatever, tossing stuff into casks all the time too. So we're playing with flavors a lot.
Can I ask a question? If you have all of these different hop varietals and your sources are changing and you're not sure of like the quantity that you're going to be able to get, is it difficult to plan a large batch of beer? Because it's like, oh, this is going to taste great, but then I'm not going to have the quantity of hops to keep making it in the way that I want it to taste.
Yeah, you want to stress out our guy, Joe Schiraldi. He's like, oh, dude, we want to make this beer with this hop. And he's like, oh, shit, I need 7 tons of an unattainable hop. That's a brilliant idea.
Call the Sherpa.
Let's try it.
But doesn't the alpha change every year too? Like, so you have to have X amount.
You're about to get me into one of my favorite quotes. Farmers make wine, engineers make beer. We're expected to make the same beer every year with agricultural products that change based on the weather, on the farmer's mood, whether the ground was wet, dry, whatever. And the wine guys, they have a good year. What do? They raise the price. They have a bad year. What do? They don't lower the price. They leave the fucking price at the same price. And then the next year they have a good year
like
again. They raise the price.
Yeah.
And it's always different. And there's always a reason. I don't get that.
Well, hold it. Good work. So as that relates to music, Austin. So let's talk about that. So you're talking about consistency to some degree. Like making your hit, if you have your hit. So if you're Justin Timberlake, you have to go out and play the same song the same way every time. Versus a jam band, you have a little more leeway. You can kind of not necessarily have to worry about making that same hit every time, or it can change it as it goes along. It sounds like in your industry, it's a little less forgiving. I mean, I guess you can have the moment where you can explore with your wild yeast, but at the same time, you might want to make sure your stout is the same every time.
Yeah, I think the pub guys have a great advantage, from a jammy kind of an aspect, because they can play around and they're like, hey, well, this is version whatever, 94 of this beer. And a lot of them intentionally play around a bit. When we're making Sawtooth or Pilsner, hard beer to make, milk stout, people expect it to be what you told them it was last week.
Yeah. So is this the kind of freedom that you only get, like, as long as you're not a certain scale, with relating to songwriting? So if you're trying to make a consistent product every time, but you still want to feel like you have the creative freedom to do what you want to do, do you lose the ability to do that once you are trying to make so many barrels?
Of course. So, yeah. That's why you have a. Oh, sorry. That's why you have a pilot system and casks. We have 3 engines going all the time, so you give yourself some opportunities to play around on the side. Because otherwise, the brewers start to go, dude, I'm playing the same fucking bass line
Exactly.
over
That's it.
and over and over.
That's totally the way I feel. I feel very much the way you have to be cautious of that as a musician to make sure you're keeping yourself inspired within the process. Every time you get on stage, oh God, I played this. I played Rosie by String Cheese Incident so many freaking times, but I'm going to play it better than I did before. And do you ever feel like there's some kind of that lag in your employees' sense that you have to kind of keep them motivated and make their best product ever? I'm sorry, you can continue.
Well, I have this unique position where I'm not actually a brewer. I interview brewers for a living. I've been doing it for 10 years. When I started, there were less than 2,000 breweries in the country, maybe even less than 1,200 or something. And when I would interview brewers and ask some of these same questions about ingredients and making beers, it was always very exciting, and they knew exactly what they were making. They had the whole recipe in their mind. They could talk to me about the flavors that they wanted to produce. And now when I interview brewers, they go, well, there's no more Simcoe available, and we made this great IPA for 4 years, and now a shitload of other breweries opened up, and we can't make the beer anymore because they bought up all the hops. And so it's a very different conversation that we have now, that the most talented brewers, who I think, much like the most talented musicians who really understand their craft and understand the notes that they're working with and the tools that they have, the most talented brewers are still making amazing beer, because it doesn't matter really what ingredients you have. You're skillful enough to put them together into a wonderful beer. If you're rather new at it, like a lot of brewers are, let's just be honest, there's a lot of new breweries going out here, you're kind of working with what you have, and you end up with some less than stellar beers. They're not the hits, if you will. And so for me, it's been fascinating to watch you guys have to deal with these new problems of ingredients and what you have available to you.
I'd like to hear from the Boulder guys who were operating when there were 20 breweries in the country, and
Exactly.
how getting ingredients were. So, Mike, pass.
Please, yes, please. David.
How getting ingredients works?
Back 20 years ago or something.
Oh,
When I was home brewing, you were like making real beer.
well, we were making a different version of real beer at that point. I mean, real beer in 1979 was a porter that you couldn't sell today because it's too pedestrian. The materials, when we got started, the materials we used, the malt and the hops came from Coors. So that was the homebrew shop that we had to go to. And Coors was actually very helpful in getting the brewery started. They understood early on the value of a healthy brewing industry. But so it's obviously changed now with what, 4,000 breweries, 4,400. How many IPAs do we have in the country now?
5, 406. Have we gone past prohibition yet? As far as
Oh yeah,
we
we're
just
well
passed. It was recently, right? About a month ago, which was what, pre-prohibition? Do you know off the top there?
Like 4,200, basically. Before Prohibition, we had 4,100 breweries in the country. So for the first time ever, we have more breweries in America than
Right. It's great. I think it's probably better beer. Better beer too, I think.
But what hasn't been passed yet is the record of breweries per capita in this country. So if you go back to the late 1800s and look at the number of breweries per capita, it would indicate potentially the country could probably hold 10,000, 15,000 breweries. And that may be the path that we're on right now.
Well, and think about what that is. Like, it's a fascinating thing. The reason we had so many breweries pre-prohibition is because beer was meant to be a local product. Like, it was your neighborhood brewery. You couldn't transport it. Believe it or not, Anheuser-Busch are the people who helped us figure out transporting fresh beer, because they refrigerated rail cars. And so that made a beer a little bit more mobile. And so I guess it's a double-edged sword. The day that happened, the amount of breweries we've had started to reduce, because you didn't need a local brewery anymore. Anheuser-Busch could give you fresh beer. But back then, it was just to have a neighborhood brewery, just like the Germans did it, just like the Czechs did it, just like it was the same. And so now we are going back to that, where we all have. It sounds ridiculous that we could have 10,000 breweries, but the reason is because we have a bunch of neighborhoods, and we should all have fresh beer in our neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that neighborhood thing that you mentioned is, I've seen it in San Diego too, and we have over 100 breweries in San Diego now. And I think that's the new model, is that neighborhood brewery. Those are the guys that'll survive. Because they're not trying to do anything, they're not trying to do national distribution, but they're just trying to get beer to their community and their just surrounding areas, working with the different restaurants and different vendors. And I think that's a really awesome model. And I think that would push us up to 10,000 at some point, because there's a lot of neighborhoods.
Super exciting.
Yeah, I would argue that we're going back to the model for a different reason. So the original big breweries all started out as ice plants. That's usually what they were before they were a brewery. And they figured that out. And then now there can be, the reason I think is because of hops. Like, how many of you guys had a beer, and I know it breaks all of the brewers' hearts when you taste your beer and it doesn't taste right. And it's because the hops are the spirit that inhabits a fresh beer. And when you encounter an IPA and the hops are the first thing to slide out of the bottle as it sits, when you encounter one and it's not right, then you'll never drink it ever again. So now I think the reason things are going local again is because everyone loves IPAs, and every local market will always have a fresh IPA. And that's the best way to do it, is to have lots of little breweries. So it's like the same thing for a different reason.
But I think it's important to distinguish that it's not local little breweries that are necessarily good. It's well-made, locally made beer.
Yeah.
There are a lot of local breweries that are in the garage next door that aren't doing the industry any favors.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, it's interesting to hear people say that I'm excited to go see this new brewery that just opened up, but odds are the beer you get in that brewery today, when they first open the doors, is not the beer they're going to be making in 6 months or a year.
Well, that's funny, because I have a new favorite, a new favorite IPA. It seems like every couple weeks, because I'm like, oh, this is great, it's great, and then I go back to get it like 6 months later, and it's not the same beer. I'm like, either they've changed their recipe, or they moved to a different facility, and they can't keep the consistency going in my mind.
And IPAs are one of the shortest shelf life beers
Wait, that's true. Good
out
point.
there. Everyone says, "Oh, wait, they made that beer to travel to India." It's like, you ever tasted beer that is sloshed around in the hold of a ship for 3 months
Right.
through the tropics in a
Exactly,
wooden barrel?
Right,
That
right,
shit
right.
tastes like ass.
I would argue the original IPAs probably tasted like shit, if we could go back into time. But now with the hop farmers coming up with so many new varieties, we joke a big parallel at Lagunitas, which we're huge music fans. I'm also a musician. Almost everyone in the brewery plays in a band. But these new hops that are coming out, we joke that we call them auto-tune, because
Right.
if you brew a shitty pale ale and you dry hop it with enough Citra or Mosaic, you just auto-tune the shit out of
Yes.
your beer.
That's a great music metaphor. That's great. I love that.
And can I hear it for the rhythm section? Anyone ever heard of malt? Lay that shit down underneath, please.
Oh, here we go. And then let's keep going with that. So you got the rhythm section. Let's talk about the malt. Maybe the malt is the bass player, the water is the drums, or maybe the other way around. And then maybe the guitar player is the hops, because it can go to 11. No, the singer, right? The singer is the key. The singer is the my mind is the yeast, because he doesn't always show up. You know what I mean? 'Cause that's how it works. You put all those ingredients together, and it's about the balance. Like you can go see your favorite band, and if it's like Warren Haynes, and the Warren Haynes is 9 times louder than the rhythm sectioner, it's awesome. But at the same time, I think it would be a better mix, a better balance if everybody was working together. And like for me, I think that's the way it works for me in music and beer. I love hoppy beers, but there has to be the malt backbone that holds that whole thing together. So,
By the way, Kyle, just so you guys know, I've only spoken to Kyle a few times. He is a serious homebrewer. So if you ever want to get Kyle in a conversation, like if you're a fan of Kyle, don't talk about music. Go talk to him about homebrew. His eyes light up. He's
yeah,
like,
I'm freaky about it.
You love homebrew. You really love.
I really love the process more so.
Yeah.
I love talking about it. It's funny. As a musician, I've been lucky enough to meet amazing, famous people like Paul Simon, and I'm like, oh, hi, how you doing, Paul? Blah, blah. But I'll meet like Mitch from Stone or something, and I don't know what to say. I'm like, hi. Like, there's a really famous brewers. I don't know what to say to them.
And Mitch is a musician, so he's like, oh my God, you're Kyle.
Well, let's keep moving. So then let's talk about collaboration, which is a big part of what we do, and how collaboration can work. sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't, you know. But it's about that process once again of experimentation. So, how about Cigar City? Let's talk about, you've collaborated a lot, right?
Yeah, we've done quite a few collaborations.
Tell us about that.
Actually, we got to collaborate with Kyle, and it was interesting because he's not in Florida. So to collaborate on the recipe, you know, a lot of it was done online, which I'm finding a lot of musicians now are writing songs in studios and then sending it over the internet to each other. So we did a lot of the recipe design online, and then we were fortunate enough to have him come down, and we got to make Happening Now for a release of your new solo, your latest solo album, right? And it was a lot of fun. So we've collaborated with musicians, we've collaborated with artists, we've collaborated with restaurateurs and chefs, and of course other brewers. You know, we're probably the youngest, definitely up here on the panel, and we look at collaborations kind of like college for brewers. We get to go and learn from some of the greatest people in their fields and work on something together, and we're putting out new art together. And we've gone and brewed with brewers 5 times bigger than us, or one of the guys in their kind of garage that we've talked about, and we've always found that we've learned something. It's kind of exciting when we could source something that Sierra Nevada couldn't source. And then, you know, so we're still lending to the conversation. And it's just, you know, in music, different instruments are all lending things to the conversation. So we really enjoy doing the collaborations. And at the end of the day, we get to drink great beer together and hang out with people we admire. And hopefully they like hanging out with us too.
What was the beer? Say again? What was the beer? It's called Happening Now was the name of the beer. What was it? It was more of a session, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and it was you know, showcasing one of the experimental hops. So it was real tropical hop kind of. I love that auto-tune comment. That was freaking great. It is like cheating with some of those hops.
I mean, does it always work out? Tell me some of the worst stories you guys done. I've heard something about Mitch was telling me something to do with seaweed in a Stone IPA.
They usually work out, but that one didn't.
Sorry, can I just bust you on that? Tell us some more about that. How did that go? Tell us what the whole thing was.
That was actually a thing that we did with BrewDog, and part of the idea was that we were going to brew on a train. Yeah. Well, you know, you guys know.
It sounds like Dr. Seuss.
You know,
Were you
the
brewed on a
BrewDog
train?
guys-
Were you brewed?
BrewDog guys like to do that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so we got seaweed, and it just, you know, it was just one of those ingredients that we didn't handle it correctly, or it just didn't. I mean, it tasted like seaweed, right? So, but you know what? We wouldn't have known that if we hadn't done it. And even when they don't work out, I sometimes that's even more valuable because you just learn from that process. Yeah, and you know, in general, the collaborations, just that sharing ideas is so cool, and just to get people's different perspectives is always so powerful. And you know, the brewing community to me seems a lot like the music community. People love to share ideas. You know, we'll call up different breweries and ask about the way they dry hop, and we'll share ideas. If we have new equipment, we'll go to, you know, a brewery that has that same equipment. We're just real open, and I think you see that there's so many collaborations over the last few years because that, I mean, we interact with each other anyway. Why not brew together? Yeah. That's the most logical next step.
One of the biggest parallels that I see between the music and the brewing process is not so much the end result of either of them, because I mean, we know what that's going to be. Like, we're enjoying a beer with our friends and having a great time, or dancing or listening to some exquisite, you know, music that was created. But the thing that makes the brewers and the musicians come together is the pursuit of the process of it and the refinement of that process. So while we're always like trying to expand our capabilities as far as like thinking of different scales to play at the right time, like you're taking the ingredients within the recipes that you have and trying to utilize those. And the community of breweries, home brewers to large scale people, all helps. And that's the same way with the musician community too, because I mean, we'll call you out on your stupid bullshit, but you know, we're all here to help. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's family. So
one of the coolest things I think about homebrewers is they're all looking to make the perfect beer, especially homebrewers. I don't think the professionals are necessarily looking to make the perfect beer because they get to make beer forever. Like, hopefully, you keep going and going. But homebrewers are always looking to make, I have to make the perfect pale ale. I have to make, it's a goal. And so I'm curious for you guys, like, about, you know, God, writing the perfect song, like that thing that is it's always out there, right? It's always so far away from it.
It's already been written
It's
100 million
already-
times, right?
Like 1,000 years ago. Maybe.
So it's not even a thought anymore.
That one guy who wrote the great song 1,000
So it's
years
never
ago.
even.
No, it's true though. That's a good point. You know, you think about the lyrics in my mind, or what I'm really struggling with now is making sure the lyrics are saying something that is from the heart to some degree and that people can relate to. Musically, you know, there are only so many chords, so you kind of probably put it together in a similar way. But you're right. You do want to go. The idea is to go out there and play your best material, your best, you know, and write your best songs and speak to as many people as you can. Huh. That's good though. That's good.
Music is in a matrix of time, but time is also very important to beer because you know, good things come to those who wait, especially when it comes to like barrel aging and things like that. I look at a barrel like a cocoon, and I joke that I've always wanted to like barrel age like some Bud Light because Kyle's wearing that Bud Light shirt.
I'm being sarcastic with my shirt, okay? Just in case they didn't know.
I always wondered about that shirt. But back to collaboration. Lagunitas has a very interesting. First off, we don't have a pilot system. We have an internal homebrew club that anyone that works at the brewery, right, even like the janitor can be a member of the homebrew club, and that's what generates the ideas that becomes our beer. And they're always doing like weird shit, like fermenting beans and whatever, like stuff that. I mean, the janitor. Yeah, the janitor is all about the beans, but another thing is most common question that I get is your beer vegan? Which the answer is yes. And the second question is, when are you guys going to collaborate with another brewery? And Lagunitas does not collaborate with other breweries, but instead we collaborate with just people, and usually those end up being homebrewers. And we have a fusion series. We're currently on Fusion 35, I think, or 36. And we basically, it's kind of a shitty idea because it's really hard to manage. We just have like people come and we give them the keys to our brewery and they can do whatever they want. And it really sucks to be me in that situation.
Well, did they clean up afterwards? That's the question.
No.
That's the worst part, right?
No, all we do as a brewery is CIP. I mean, that's like, all these guys can tell you. You guys know that brewing is mostly cleaning. No, the guys never CIP anything. They leave a dirty brew house. They have some fucking weird beer with, some like fermented and aged in like hubcaps. And then we're...
Louder ton full of dead fish.
Oh, totally. I wanted to ask a question though. I wanted to know. I obviously I know California brewers here like Jeremy, but I don't know all these Colorado guys, and I want to know if all of us were homebrewers before we were commercial brewers.
I love that question.
I'll start. I actually started working at Bridgeport in Portland, Oregon, and about probably 3 months after starting there is when I started homebrewing, and that's when the back of my house started to look like a meth lab, where 1 to 2 days on the weekend I'd be brewing. So I actually had a refrigerator in the front of my house where we had an agreement with the neighbors that they could come over, get beer, because the object was to get the kegs empty as fast as possible. So 3 guys living in a house producing 20 gallons a week, 3 of us couldn't, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't drink that. So we'd have neighbors. We had probably 10 or 15 different houses around us where people would walk in, we'd be in the living room, and say, oh, hey, what's going on? They just go to the refrigerator, pour themselves a half gallon of beer, and walk away. The objective wasn't to socialize with them, it was to get the beer out of the house. At that point, neighborhood brewing is a really popular hobby to have.
That's a lot of work every weekend for you.
It was a lot of work. I'd ride my bike to Bridgeport to get my kegs cleaned. I looked like a little rocket boy on my bicycle. I'd have two Cornelius kegs in my bike bags, and then a third one that looked like the engine coming out the back of the rack. And I'm going.
What's the setup? Because modern homebrew setups are getting pretty good. I have a pretty nice one called Ruby Street. What was it back then? Just pots on the stove or pots outside?
It was half barrels.
Yeah,
That
nice.
were they're actually from some Mexican brewery that our distributor at the time didn't I shouldn't say this, but didn't want to return the kegs to the brewery, so they're in the discard pile, and just you go to the distributor and say, I need some kegs. Sure, we can have these Mexican ones aren't going back. Like, thank you very much.
They've crossed the border once.
Yeah, they're well, Donald Trump's wall wouldn't allow those kegs to go back, so those kegs were just dealing in the future. So that's how I got into it, and that the bug bit at that point.
Yeah, I grew up around the world and started drinking beer when I was 15 in Germany in high school. And I moved back to the States and realized all the beer was watered down. But then I went to the Air Force and went back overseas for a long time. I got back, and a guy I'd met at the academy, Air Force Academy, was a home brewer. And he had just come back in from South Asia, so I visited dozens of breweries with my wife, trying to figure out where we're going to live. And I saw which brewery am I going to live in here? And we ended up in Longmont, Colorado, which is a sweet spot, don't tell anybody. And I was like, Dick, teach me how to brew. This thing is going to happen. This is 1993. This is going to happen. I'm telling you, people will drink good beer if we just make it. It's like, teach me how to brew. I brewed a stout. We drank a bunch of stout. Convinced him that there was maybe a business here. That was about as far as we could. Maybe we can make a living and make beer. So brewed my first batch. What's brewing? You remember John Arthur?
Of course.
John Arthur, up. That guy was righteous. Paul Gazzo was the dude that we were brewing 2 5-gallon all grains a week. We were going same kind of deal on Sundays and Wednesdays. I think we racked, and we would invite all the neighbors over. And it's like, we got a lot of full kegs here, people. Which one do you like better? And drink it, and let's go. So same kind of a thing. Yeah, the home brewing in our same kind of situation with you guys. Accounting, HVAC, dude. Everybody is home brewing. They all get a chance to play on the pilot. It's a really, we're just getting that fully going now because our pilot system is quite new. But home brewing is fundamental to professional brewing. And years ago, when the existential crisis between the AOB, the Association of Brewers, and the Brewers Association of America, when those guys smashed together, there was a livid, just on fire debate about the role of hobby brewers versus professional brewers. And the board was going ape shit. There was like some guys like, these people have no business in here. This is serious. This is business. And then the other guys, the voices of wisdom, the Jack Joyces of the world from Rogue, he's going, are you fucking kidding me? And this Jack Joyce talked like that. It's like, these people live, breathe, bleed beer, and you don't want them part of your organization? Are you people all out of your mind? And basically, the argument was made and the room was swayed, and that's why the AHA, Steve.
Let's say AHA.
That's why the AHA is still part of the BA, is because there were visionaries, the guys that came before us, that said, you cannot cut yourself off from your root source of energy that caused all of us to get into this business.
Can I address that too? I'm so glad, Eric. This is why I love interviewing Eric, because he doesn't give a shit. He'll say it all. This was a big deal back then, and I remember interviewing certain brewers, and they would come on my show, and they were on the board of the Brewers Association, and my listeners are 90% homebrewers, and they would never mention their opinion about homebrewers, which was actually a negative opinion. But the truth, how many people here are homebrewers? I'm just curious. Oh my God. See? And then of you, how many of you purchase craft beer? Every single one of you, more than most people. Now, but here was the point, and it's an interesting point. The point was that some homebrewers aren't making great beer, and they're out there sharing their beer with their friends, telling them how great it is, and it's terrible. You've all had bad homebrew. And so the idea was that maybe that's bringing down craft beer because it would be in the same genre, and we're sort of, we're not lifting up professional brewers. And these professional brewers were saying, look, now we've grown up. Yes, I also used to be a home brewer, but now I've grown up and I'm a big guy and I'm making great beer, and we don't need them ruining the reputation of great beer. So it is an interesting point. I'm not saying it has no value, but as Eric's saying, every one of these guys came from the homebrew world, and they all. So it would be like saying, you don't go see garage bands anymore because they're ruining music. But you do go see garage bands because you see that one kid who's got the fire in his or her eyes, like just lighting it up, and you go, all right, they're not very good right now, but they're going to be great. One day they're going to be great. You would never want to shut that down. So I'm just so glad that you mentioned that because it's a good point. Homebrewers are driving the craft beer industry.
Thank you to all homebrewers. I want to get some questions shortly, but I did want to bring up one more topic of what we call, in some degree, called pay to play, like placement, product placement. In our industry, we're kind of, it's funny. I got a check from Google or something for 10,000 plays of my song, and it was like 49 cents or something like that. So, yeah, and it's like, exactly, right. You can double my profits. Thank you. So, and as it relates to beer, I'm wondering, is there some sort of like, once you have your hits, do you have to, I really don't know. Explain to me, how do you get product placements? Do you have to bribe the breweries when you first get started, or why don't you speak to that, like since you're new?
Yeah, we don't pay to play, we don't discount. We can't make enough beer to satisfy demand as it is now, so why sell it at less of a profit? So what's helped us is continuing to make consistent great beer, and our consumers are going to the retailers and asking for it. Why don't you carry it? Our Highlight IPA is our #1 seller, and it was the consumers that helped us go to Publix, which is a huge retailer that I think actually we're all in Florida, but they're really hard to get into, and slotting fees and all that are illegal in the beer business, but it definitely is happening out there.
Slotting fees, that's we get to
Paying to get your beer on a shelf, or even there's kind of new ways around the law now that we're opposed to, is just discounting to get your product on shelf. So there's often buy one get one frees, and if you want to get your new product in, you have to be willing to do that. Or you hang tight and have awesome freaking consumers that love your beer, and they're going to the store every day and telling that store manager, I'd love to shop here, but you don't carry any beer I want to carry. So then finally they hear that enough, and it really does work. That's how we got in to Publix, and now we have a great relationship with them. They're the largest beer buyer in our state of Florida, and we have authorizations in all of their stores. So I think if you can hang tight and do the right way, your business will continue to grow. But it's getting scary out there now because there's people that are maybe over-leveraged, undercapitalized, and they've got beer sitting there that no one is interested in buying. Maybe it's a quality issue, who knows? And those are the people, that's going to get real scary in the next few years, I think, for all of us, when people are really desperate to get their beer sold and see what they'll do to get it on the shelf.
I have a thought.
Oh, really? That'd be the first. Yeah, go ahead.
Over leveraged, undercapitalized. That's, I think, in my opinion, the primary trigger of what's causing all of these takeovers right now.
Yeah.
People are getting out over their skis too far. But I wanted to go back to pay to play. I got an email that I read this morning. It's a screen capture of a text from one of our reps in Colorado going, "Yeah, sorry man, I got bad news. We're taking off both of your handles because a brewery that was recently acquired by ABI, I was told I didn't have to say any brewery names, called Breckenridge, that already threw us out of all of their shops in Colorado because we actually expressed the opinion that independence matters. And if you're gonna go off on Elysian when they sell out, you better fucking suck it up when people give you shit." That's how I feel. They threw us out of all of their accounts. Now those guys are out there discounting their beer and attacking our handles. You want to talk pay to play? ABI, those guys have unlimited resources, and their goal is total world domination. And anybody that they buy is now being used to destroy what we've all collectively created, and I'm not going to take it.
I mean, I wonder how that, as it relates to us, like all the big companies being sold out, all the big bands getting signed to record labels, in your world. It's a similar thing, although I guess it's changing. We're going a lot more independent because of YouTube, et cetera. But
I feel like it's kind of been an opposite confluence because there's like an explosion of creativity in the beer world, and there's also that in the music world, but there used to be centralized distribution of music, and now it's become so decentralized that it's really difficult for anybody who's doing their own thing and is making something interesting to get any traction anywhere because there's just a flood of information constantly, and it's difficult. And on the beer side, like everything is becoming so, caught up in the same thing and owned by so few companies.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's hard for anybody being independent to do anything, but for opposite reasons.
Well, there's also the old like, oh, my favorite, independent band just made it, so now they're not cool anymore. Like you left me, right? You've left me. You sold out.
You have to sacrifice something in order to give that consistency of your product.
Of course you do. But also, so I have I don't know what to think because there are problems when ABI and different companies are spending the money to illegally or legally in some channels push out other breweries. At the same time, I've met so many brewers over the last 10 years that I see them get purchased, I see them get capitalized, I see them get financed, and I'm so proud of them. I'm so happy for them too that they've done well. I've known Jeremy for a long time, and I'm going, Jeremy, you can now make all the beer you want. You're going to sell it in Mexico. Who's selling great craft beer in Mexico right now? Nobody. Lagunitas is about to be able to do that. So, like, there are some very, very cool things about some of these purchases and some of these mergers, and I'm the fan who's caught in the middle going, all right, did he sell out, or should I just be so proud of him for being successful?
I mean, as long as the quality is staying the same,
Yes.
That's what we need to worry about.
So I agree with you on, so quality is one thing, and then sort of predatory tactics are the other thing. And so those are the two things we have to watch out for. And if as consumers we're still paying attention to those two things, then I have no problem with capitalization and people being bought, but they are two very important things to watch out for.
I think you want to, when people sell their business, that to me is a personal issue. If somebody builds a brewery and it's super successful and they decide, I want to go build computer chips, more power to them. Take their money and do it. What we as people in the industry and all of you as beer consumers and beer lovers need to keep in mind is that there are some fundamental shifts in the competitive landscape and how beer gets from the producers to the consumers. And that's what's going to happen now is there's going to be this kind of in the boring part of what I would think is the boring part of the industry, which is how does beer get from a brewery to a consumer? That's where the battle is coming down. And that's where the discounting is happening. That's where you may see the choices that a distributor has gets throttled down, and breweries will no longer have pathways to the draft lines or the shelf in the liquor store. And there's going to be a generational shift that we're probably just in the first 20 years of. I mean, we've gone through almost 40 years of craft beer now. We're going to go through another evolution, and it may be the rise of the craft distributors again, because it's going to be like a greased balloon. ABI may be trying to buy up a bunch of breweries, but as soon as they squeeze the middle, something's going to pop out the sides.
Where does the state law come into play here? Because in Colorado, for example, there's a big push between the Kroger, the big supermarket distributor, and King Super. It's Kroger brand, they're Publix or whatever, anywhere. But they want to be able to sell craft beer, but the law states that you can't sell above 3.2 in any grocery store. So if you're gonna try to leverage distribution and maintain control and independence, how does that interact with the state governing laws, and do you have any influence over that as brewers?
Well, every state has different laws. So you're catering your business plan. In Colorado, we cater our business plan to the regulations in Colorado. When we're selling beer in Florida, we cater our business plan to the regulations there. Alcohol sale is a states' right issue, and that's not going to change. But it doesn't change the fact that if a distributor won't buy your beer or won't sell your beer, you can't get around that.
And we got a lot of cool themes going here. So the democratization of the distribution within music, that's happening on the one side. All of the Pico Nanos, neighborhood pubs that are brewing their own beer, boom, selling directly 90+% of their production, and they can actually make a living because in some states, half of them or more, you can actually sell a pint directly. So that's one theme that's going on. But what David was talking about, the access to market, why does independence matter? Is because ABI owns about 10% of their distribution directly now. And we as brewers are required to go through a distributor in every single market, unless in your home market you can self-distribute. So you're forced to use a network that has been, and they have stated their intention to vertically integrate their business. So now they own 10, they're about to announce a few more breweries. Apparently they've told the DOJ they've got some more deals going. So they're gonna continue to buy breweries. They're gonna continue, I think, even though they deny it, to vertically integrate. They laid their plans out, and then they got smacked down by, it's like, you can't say that. It's like, well, they stopped saying it, but they're still doing it. So don't say it. So they control the distribution. All of us are forced to go through a very limited number of wholesalers in each market. So the more of them they own, the harder it is to get there. And when you walk into an airport in Burbank, California, and you go, wow, there's 6 IPAs on. Every single one of them is owned by ABI. How does that work? Well, they continue to take over the distribution. We have fewer and fewer choices. Everything's getting bigger. They're taking, number one's taking over number two. They're going to be even bigger number one. And like I said, total world domination is coming, and we're forced to work within the system. So independence and access to market is going to really be a critical thing. And if you give a shit about the beer world that your kids are going to grow up in, pay attention to whom you are giving your money.
It's funny. Thank you. That's awesome. Like Ticketmaster or Live Nation for us, they basically own every venue. You know, there's no more local independent. Like String Cheese actually sued Ticketmaster at one point because we were unable to play the venues we wanted to play to without going through them.
How'd that go for you?
We actually did okay. I can't really speak to it, but we did okay. Because we were able to sell our own. We basically said they were a monopoly essentially, and we were able to sell our own tickets. At one point, we actually went and bought all the tickets and resold them to our fans, which was really fun, an experiment. Well, we have so many great minds up here. Do people have questions? Any homebrewers or anybody? Anybody? Yes.
What Eric was saying is something that had never occurred to me. Thank you. When you're talking about that you're using an agricultural product, and one of the things with craft beer that we enjoy so much is the consistency, not just in the quality, but the consistency in the flavor of the beer. That, just on the basis of what you're saying, is that something that you can fine-tune every batch as you do it to maintain the consistency and the flavor because of the variation in the different hops that are available at the time?
Buying correctly, going to the fields, going to the hop growers, and getting the right stuff is a fundamental thing that we've started to do. And when you don't do it, you don't get the best quality. Having good suppliers on the malt side, just the same. You've got to have good partners, and you've got to educate yourself, and you've got to participate in the sourcing. So that's important.
Do you run into the situation though where we bought this hop 2 months ago and now it is just a little bit different?
Yeah, that can be an issue. You know, Amarillo is actually a hop that I think has changed quite a bit over the last few years. First time we had it, we were so jazzed about it, and we're like, God, it's like Hawaiian Punch, and we were totally jazzed about it, and so we bought a lot of it. And the next year, we're like, wow, what happened to the Hawaiian Punch? You know, fortunately, there's a lot of hops out there now, so you can find. You know, and I'll just echo what Eric said. You know, having those relationships with your vendors who will call you up and say, hey, I know you were looking for a hop like this. Here's a new hop that we even think is better than this. So I think having those relationships is key. And then on the consistency level too is just, you know, we're always looking at our beers. You're always fine tuning. You're always tasting. We do sensory all the time, every day, 2 or 3 times a day. And you have to be constant and just always do that and always keep working to try to maintain consistency. I think it's the biggest challenge.
at Lagunitas, we say the best sensory equipment that you have is right here. So it's just tasting and smelling. It's funny what you said about Amarillo, because we call that hop the slot machine now. But to really dig in a little bit more to that question, it's all about age, really. It's the worst thing about our beer is that it goes out there, and out there is scary. And depending on how old that beer is when the consumer gets it, that almost, you can brew very well. I mean, we're all good brewers. You guys are good brewers. And I don't ever remember having trouble with an old homebrew, because I was typically opening them before they had even carbonated. I was so excited. So once you enter a commercial brewing situation, you're up to your eyeballs in beer, and then old beer happens, and that's really sad.
I don't want to talk out of turn. Is it okay for me to ask a homebrew process question?
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready to make the move from extract to all grain. I completed negotiations for a little strip of land in my garage.
He's taken all of the closets.
So anyway, I was wondering if one of you could talk about the difference between batch sparge and fly sparge.
The difference, like in the result, or in the difference in doing it? Just batch sparge. It's a piece of cake. It's so easy to do. So I do both. I started fly sparging. Fly sparging, if you're not a home brewer, you sort of consistently run water through the mash tun until you get your beer, your wort. In batch sparging, you fill it up, you empty it, you fill it again, you empty it until you've gotten your volume. Most people, especially if you're just switching over, have had a lot more success with batch sparging than fly sparging. Fly sparging, you're constantly tinkering with the flow and the whole thing. So I would suggest starting with batch sparging. And then if you get bored with that, switch over to fly sparging, because you'll have more shit to do.
It's an interesting question, because at Lagunitas we have one brewery in California and one in Chicago. The one in Chicago is set up to do continuous sparging, but the one in Petaluma does batch sparging. One thing that does do is when you put all that water on top of your grain bed, it increases your differential pressure. So I guess it's if you're doing a real troublesome brew, something with a lot of oats or something like that, I wouldn't recommend it. So I would go with continuous.
Add 40% rye and then try it.
Oh, don't. Whatever you do, don't do that.
And everything else Eric said.
And the industry loves the guys that are really doing really well is like the suppliers, and like guys like Great Western Brewer Supply Group. They're always trying to push rice hulls, and all that I know that happens is when you open a bag of rice hulls, they explode and they go everywhere. And we use them one time, and we are still cleaning them up. So that's a vote against rice hulls.
You guys have talked about the big dogs buying the breweries out there, and also the distribution. How about, are they out there looking at the agricultural part of it? Are they looking at buying the hops up and actually controlling the whole process?
We oftentimes hear we can't get Simcoe because you have it all, and we've known our farmers for over 10 years, and the only thing that all of our farmers have in common is they've all been screwed by ABI. In fact, we use a lot of a hop called Willamette, and Willamette was planted for ABI, and then ABI said, "Oh, all that Willamette, we don't want it anymore," and Willamette almost went away. Farmers don't want to grow it, and ABI actually told the farmers you planted all that, and now we don't want it. Right now, I don't understand. I see what ABI is doing. I just heard that 10 Barrel is opening up a brewery in San Diego, and I just heard that they're opening up one in the artistic spot of Miami, the Wynwood neighborhood. So they're trying to make us believe that they're the local brewery. Everywhere they're gonna use their various holdings to be local everywhere. And the key, I think Eric was saying, is going to be education to ourselves and our children to prevent that. What they're doing out in the farms, I don't really understand, because they basically just screw the farmers, and they have a track record of that. I can't see that being a good strategy for something that we all struggle to get, which is hops.
We have direct experience, and again, not to name names, but there's a brewery from Chicago that got bought by ABI called Goose Island, and a few. It sounds like Moose Byland, yes. And we had kind of a handshake deal with BSG, one of the hop suppliers, to buy. We were a Magnum hop user for our primary bittering for years, and somehow between us being told, "Oh yeah, we got you covered," and signing the contract, somehow ABI bought them all, and there weren't any left, and so we ended up switching to CTZ because you couldn't get that anymore. So when you hear me talk, I'm not making shit up. This is just my life and our brewery's life and our industry's life and the reality of what we actually see. And you always hear, "Oh, it's not so bad. As long as the beer is good, I'll keep drinking it." That's a cop-out. That is a lack of education. That's a lack of rigor in the way you view the world. If you don't think that your actions have consequences, then get off the fucking world.
So, Eric, I would just say that you have to keep helping us know that as consumers, and not just by yelling at us about it. And I'm not calling you out but I mean, I think you make an important message. But as consumers, we don't always know. We do just want good beer, and so. Just like you had to teach us about craft beer in the beginning, like education is how craft beer got popular, because we all went out there and we taught people about good quality ingredients and all malt beer, right? So I think now our new job is to keep delivering this message that says, just because you're being told it's all cool and happy and fine if the beer is good, here are some of the things that are happening in your world. So just education has to keep happening.
I can come at it from a different angle because we have a brewery in Chicago. Guess what happened when we announced we were building a brewery in Chicago? Every single brewer at Goose Island applied to switch teams. I was inundated, and I felt bad. I was like, I'm going to take all their brewers, and we joke. There are certain breweries that like every brewer has worked at, and Goose Island's one of them. I mean, they're like a training ground. And we just hired a brewer from Bell's, which is rare because Bell's is a pretty awesome brewery. And his resume was interesting because he worked for Goose Island before and after the AB takeover. And he basically told me in a lot of different ways what that experience was like, and it did nothing good. And it was really interesting to hear that from someone that was there before and after.
Any other questions? We have to wrap up shortly.
Kyle, can I just follow? I think the question,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
actually, before the ABI rant, thank you, Eric, was is ABI going up the supply chain?
That was the question
to
originally,
growers?
yes.
They own some of their own farms in Idaho. I think it's Elk Mountain is what they call it, and they grow a variety of hops there. But I'm not aware of them moving into trying to buy out growers. The growers, I think, are fiercely independent and highly appreciative of the development of the craft beer industry because it makes them less reliant on these global industrial brewers. They also like the relationship they have with craft brewers who come out to the field, see the hops, discuss with the growers what they're looking for. So I think our industry is providing cover for them and allowing them and providing excellent returns on their investments. So I mean, hops 10 or 15 years ago, you get them for $2, $3 a pound. Now you're up $7, $8, $9, $10, $15 a pound. Hope we don't. We bought hops during the crisis for as much as $33 a pound.
The crisis.
But the crisis of 2008. So I think that the growers have a lot of reason to hold on to what they're doing because they've got a very, I think, promising future that they see. And we're
Right, everybody's using more
blissfully
hops, right? It goes to
inefficient.
11, yes. Oh, is it one more question in the back there? Yeah.
I guess first I'd like to offer a shout out to Justin and the BN Army. Nothing improved my brewing more than the Can You Brew It series and then the Style Guide series. So thank you very much. I guess I'd also like to ask the West Coast brewers that are moving east, is your move more about access to market, shorten the supply chain, or distribution issues?
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously, yes. I mean, everything. You know, the fresh beer aspect. Going to brew it out on the East Coast, so we'll be able to get it to those markets a lot quicker. It's one of the reasons we're doing a brewery in Berlin too.
That's where Mitch is right now in Berlin.
Yeah,
right?
it's because we want to get beer fresh to people. And as Jeremy had said earlier, there's nothing worse than having an old IPA that's just shot and oxidized. I was in England a few years ago and with Mitch, and we found Ruination. We were all excited. It was a year old. So that's a great beer, but not at a year old. So in general, though, yes, there's just positives all around for being able to move and do it. Obviously, it costs a few dollars, but we think it's going to be well worth it.
I would add that for us,
Oh, you're going to Richmond. I didn't know that. That's great.
for us, it was about water. In California, you pretty much rely on rain for all your water or snow. And I don't know if you guys know this, but like the hops almost were really, really fucked because there was no snowpack. And they just got a little bit of snow, so now is another year with hops. It's the same way with us for water. And then the other thing, it's about trying to take the diesel out of the beer. You know, every bottle that we calculated how many fluid ounces of diesel were in each bottle, and then we realized, oh crap, that actually the amount of trucks that we just send to Chicago is like that pays for the brewery.
I think we're about done. We could talk forever, and we might still talk after, but I think for this moment, I appreciate all your time, and I appreciate all you guys coming out. I hope you had a great time. I saw some parallels between music and beer, and it's always a pleasure for me to hang out with you all. So we'll see you at the tastings today, and it's not like there's a couple special beers being put out on taps all around here that are different than the last couple days. And I also want to say that there's someone here, his name is Mark. Is Mark here? He has a book out in the back all about, I guess you can talk about the industry and homebrewing. You can speak to him in the back there. But thank you so much, and enjoy the music and the great beer. Take care.